Okay. So for the last part of class here, we do still have some numbers that don't follow our convention that we had talked about before. So why might this not be the same as another zero value? Well, it probably uses a different formatting, or it is not a numeric variable. It is a string variable. So the other variable that's pretty common down here is for incremental output, which is format statement number 3. Where is this used commonly in most posts? Arcs. A lot of times our I, J, and K values are incremental, start to center or center to start. So go down here to the other format statement. You can see format statement 4, 3 for X inc, Y inc, and Z inc, and then 3 for I out, J out, K out. So format statement 2 and format statement 3 are pretty good candidates. So we're going to change those to 1 and 1. We're going to add leading, and we're going to add a 0 after the decimal for a whole number. That's what the Z does. So we'll add the LZ to format statement number 3. And we'll look at the output. I's and J's look good. What about here? See it again here. So we know we've got something in the post that doesn't match our numeric variable formatting that we're using for most of the other numbers. Okay, so how do we track it down? First thing I always do when I'm looking for something, even before I start debugging, I search for it. Yeah, I got a couple people commenting that's hard-coded, right? Possible literal? Yeah. Typically with stuff like this, it's a string literal, which just means a string that we've created in the post that creates these characters that come out, but that aren't tied to any other numeric variable. The thing about a numeric variable is it uses modality. So there's always the numeric value and then the previous value. And MP has a mechanism where it updates those values constantly. So you always know where the last position you were was. This is a case where we're telling the machine to go home. So in Z, G91, G28, Z0. And we may, since it's always the same position, always going to be Z0, we're not setting the numeric value for Z and then outputting it. We're just doing a string literal. So to search for a literal in the post, you just search for those characters. Go up to the top of the post, search for Z0 decimal. Okay, here's one place, Z0. And we know it's a string, so we can do something like this. Test 1. I'm going to search for the next Z0. Here's another one. So I'll make that one test 2. Here's one. Now I'm going to have to remember doing it this way to go back in and take all these strings out, or otherwise I'll screw stuff up. But this is a perfectly valid way to go search through the post, and when we find a string, because a string can output any set of characters, we just modify it. I found 4 occurrences. So you can see that it wasn't too hard for me to add test 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the end of that string. Now I go back in Mastercam, and I pretty quickly definitively know exactly where that's coming out from. So here's one that's coming out from test 2. Here's one that's coming out from test 3. And this is partly why I did it, because there may be multiple places within the post that are generating output. And how do we know which one? We test. So we've got 3 places that are coming out from .test3, and 1 place that's coming out from test 2. Okay. Good to know. So now I can go back in here, go find test 2, and make that 0.0. Find test 3 and do the same. Now, it's also pretty easy for me to do a search and replace, or find and replace z.0 with the quotes like this with z0.0. So that's another perfectly valid way to go about doing this, rather than trying to find out which one of these is manually, which one's which here. But I'm going to go through here. Now, if I know I have to have 0 after every literal, wouldn't it make sense to also do the same thing with X? Yeah, probably would. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to replace here. So we'll do x0 point with x0.0. We'll go up to the top of the post and do find next. So we'll do a replace there. Replace there. It's in a blocked out portion, but you know what? If we ever hit it again, might as well. I'll do it there and there. There, there. So there's quite a few of them, right? Oh, now I have to be careful, because if I keep on doing it, it's going to wrap back around. So if I do find next, you can see that I replaced it one too many times. If I do find next again, again I did it one too many. So keep on looking here. Oh. Okay, so that's all of them. Now I'll get smarter with my Y zeros. So we'll do the same thing here. Y, we're going to replace it with Y00, and I'll just do replace all. And if I want to be sure it's within the string, I can do this. I can actually add the string characters. So now it's only going to do it if it exists inside the double quotes. I hit replace all, 6 occurrences replaced. So now I save and repost. Okay, so that pretty much for all of the numeric values, there's really only 2 position outputs you have to worry about. There are some other things like feed that you also need to be aware of, so some of these may need to be modified as well, but most of the position outputs are going to be in this top section here. So if we go back to FMT for the format assignments, you can see all of these are integers because they all use format statement number 4. This is an integer for sequence number. This is format statement number 2, positional. Format statement number 3, incremental. So that would make sense for these guys right here. C-abs, C absolute, is the rotary. Whether it's an A, B, or C, in this case it's an A. You can see it right there. The internal variable name is C-abs, and the format statement it uses is number 11. So if we go look at number 11, that would make sense. Absolute 3 place. So it's going to round it to a 3 place decimal because that's, the precision of many of the rotary tables out there. If format statement number 11, or I should say, if our rotary table had 4 decimal digits for the precision, we could certainly change this here. But we need to be careful if we do that, because we don't know what other variables in the post use format statement number 11. And also in this case, we actually have 5 format statements that are defined for different levels of precision. So rather than making changes here, it is more common to make your change here, to actually change the format statement number that is assigned to a variable. Okay, so if we wanted 4 place decimal, that's a good thing. Go back down here, we'll assign it to, number 12. So Ting is asking what it becomes if you add a $sign after it. For example, $Y. The thing about the variable values is that the $sign character is reserved in MP for predefined variables. So if you were to add the $sign after X abs, you'll notice it doesn't highlight, and in fact you would get an error if you tried to run the post. The only time you can use the $sign at the end of a variable name is with a predefined variable. So it actually has to be a variable that's already defined inside MP. So for example, any variable that you create, you can see all of these right here, do not have $signs at the end, because they're user-defined variables. You must not use a $sign. These ones you can use a $sign because they are predefined. How do I know if the variable is predefined or not? We use our handy IntelliSense or autocomplete. Anytime you start typing in the Code Expert Editor, MP is going to pop up a list of all the predefined post blocks, strings, variables, operators, and functions. And in fact, there are filters below that you can use to filter on only a certain type of something. So for example, if I wanted a predefined variable that had to do something with the tool, probably going to start with T. It may not, and this is why you can literally go through every predefined variable by just typing a letter and then scrolling through the column. All right, there's a bunch that start with A. If you try Q, for example, there's like 1, right? There's only 1 variable that starts with Q. There are a bunch that start with T. So to make it a little easier, we also have these filters down here. So I'm going to turn off functions, operators, strings, and post blocks. So this leaves me only the variables. There are still quite a few of them that start with T. Now, for each of these variables that's in the list, I can put my cursor on the variable, and MP is going to pop up this little quick help. So mil math helper, relative position of intersections for 2D intersection postline functions. T1 $sign provides the position along the first intersecting element. T2 provides the position along the second. So if I look in, to each of these variables, if I hold it over T $sign, it tells me that's the tool number. Oh, again, let me filter those. So tap pitch for tapping tools, this is the pitch of the thread on the tap. This is output in either inches per thread or millimeters per thread. If I go look at time or TCR, tool corner radius, TLDIA, tool diameter, TL name. So you notice it says obsolete command variable to output the tool name. Use of this variable is not recommended. It has been superseded by the string str tool. Okay, so I know to use str tool if I want the tool name. TL NGNO, tool length offset number entered in Mastercam. Awesome. Okay, tool length number. TLOFFNO, tool off number, tool diameter offset number. So we got the length number and the diameter offset number. If I grab TLRAD, that gives me the tool radius. So if I want to know, now I already have the tool diameter as a separate variable, but if I needed the radius for some calculation, I can just grab the tool rad if I need it. I don't need to create a separate variable and take tool diameter and divide it by 2. I've already got a predefined variable that gives it to me. Okay, tool op, tool type, tool 0. There's just a ton of different values that are available to us in that MP language. So that's how we can check and see, is there a predefined variable that exists with the name that I'm trying to use? Now keep in mind, predefined variables in general get their values from the NCI file. They are constantly being updated and overwritten. So if you want a variable to output something for you, my recommendation is create a user-defined variable. You wouldn't want to do something like this. So for example, we already have a variable called $. We would not want to try and create a variable that was just Y with no $. That's going to be way too confusing and might result in an error. So, name it something else. We've already got Y out. I tend to name it like something related to what I'm going to do with it. Y home. If I was going to output the Y home position, or Y tool change, if it was going to be a position that I was going to use to send it to a Y position at the tool change. Something descriptive. You always want to be, you always want to convey as much information as practical with the variable name. Pick something that's related to what you're going to do with it that makes sense. Speed for spindle speed. It's not rotation, right? Because rotation could be a rotary position. You want to know what's my spindle speed. Gear for the gear range M code. Okay, you're not going to call this chicken soup to output the gear. You're going to call it something that relates to the function of what it's doing. At least that's my advice. That's kind of the best practice way to do that. All right, looks like we are running into the end of class. Yeah. So we've really gotten to talk about format statements, which is this part of MP. And although we change this, it's important to know how to change it. We actually change it fairly rarely. Most of the time what I'm doing is either modifying the variables themselves, or like in the case of CABS here, changing which format assignment is assigned to the value. Now I think since we are coming to the end, I'll wrap it up by just creating my own format statement. So if we're going to create one from scratch, we always start in a modern post with FS2. We can create a format statement with only one column. I do this for things where there is no difference between the metric and the inch. All of these are good candidates right here. The left column is the same as the right column. All of these are good candidates here. The left column is the same as the right column. So there's no reason other than they thought it would be a good idea to create, or I guess to make it easy to modify in case you needed to modify one or the other. There's no reason we couldn't create these as FS type 1. So if we were going to make FS4 here, format statement number 2, or format statement type 2 number 4, a regular FS, we would take away the 2, and we would just take away the second column of numbers. And it would function exactly the same. I mean, it would make no difference whether we ran the post in metric or inch, because the output was the same for both columns. Okay, so if I'm going to create a new one down here, this would be number 18. And maybe I need something for tapping. Okay, for my pitch tapping, my machine can accept up to 6 decimal places for precision. Okay, so I'm going to make that a 1.6. 1.6, so 1 integer digit, 6 decimal digits. I want to force my 1 leading 0 if it is 0, and I don't need to force trailing. So if my if my pitch is 0.25, then 0.25 is just fine. But I also need, if I've got like a 1 inch or a 1 millimeter metric pitch, I want the 0. So I'm going to put the Z. So that's my new format statement, type 2. Now, there's usually something in here for pitch. See, pitch, tap pitch, inches per thread, and I can simply change my number here. We do also have to check and see, you can see up here, end tap threads, number of threads per inch, TPI, divided by pitch. So this is the number of threads per inch. If I want the metric value, I actually have to divide it by the pitch to get the real value for metric. So if I search for pitch in this post, first thing I'll do before I search, set my bookmark. So here in PQ, we've got save underscore use underscore pitch equals use pitch. Okay. If MI6 use pitch equals 1. Okay, so here it says if drill cycle equals 3, and if MI6 use pitch equals 1, else use pitch equals save use pitch. So as I'm searching this word pitch, you can see that there's actually a variable called use pitch as well. So we have the variable pitch. Here's where it's actually getting assigned. So if we're in metric values, pitch equals end tap threads, else pitch equals 1 divided by end tap threads. And if I keep searching, here's pitch on the output line. This is where the variable is actually going to get output. So here's a calculation in PF calc units per minute. So if I search again, I get, actually, I want to search for just pitch. Hold on one sec, guys. Let me just make sure I really truly was at the end. Yeah. Okay. So I search at the bottom there, and it wraps me up around to the top. I had a question. How do we get G95 for tapping? The answer is we have to enable use pitch. Okay? So there's two variables up at the top of this post that change the output for pitch tapping. So use pitch has a setting of 0 or 1. 0 is use feed per tapping. 1 is use pitch for tapping. This just changes the formatting of the pitch variable. Then there is the rigid tap switch. So the rigid tap gives you regular floating tap output, which is just normal G84. A setting of 1 gives you rigid tap output. What this does is this actually suppresses the spindle output and outputs M29. So there's two different options here. So we'll set rigid tap to 0, we'll set use pitch to 1. So back in Mastercam here, I'm going to change this. I'm going to go grab a 201 drill. Good old number 7 for a quarter 20 tap. And in op 3, I'll double click on my right hand taps. We'll go grab a quarter 20. And in my cut parameters, I'm going to change to drill cycle number 4. This is actually drill cycle number 3. It's the 4th item in the list. This is item 0. This is item 1. This is item 2. Or excuse me, 0, 1, 2, or 3. So this is going to be drill cycle number 3. Okay, so we're tapping. Now, in the MP Master post, we also make use of the miscellaneous values for tapping. Unit per rev feed, G95. 0 is no, 1 is yes. So Andrew, I think you asked, how do we get G95? You change that to 1. That's it. So change that to 1. Force the regen anytime you change a misvalue. And we post it out. Oh, you know what? Let me change something real quick. Let's get back down to our format statements. Let's change these bad boys back to what they were. Okay. Let's fix our output. Repost. And now we go down to our quarter 20 tap. So we're getting a G95 and we're getting our feed output as the pitch of the tap. If I go back in there and change it to 0, force a regen, okay, that actually still outputted in pitch because we set the switch. So this is a situation where we actually have a couple options. I can force pitch tapping here at the top of the post. Or I can leave this set to 0 and I can force it in an individual operation by using the misc value here. So really, I've kind of got the best of both worlds with this post. If I always want pitch no matter what, I set it in the post and I forget it. If I want to be able to individually select on an operation basis which one of these use pitch. I can set it here. So now we should still get pitch output because I've set it only in the operation G95 pitch. Now if I set it back to 0, force that regen, and repost, now we get it as a feed rate value. So now we get the G94 and we get the F 3.06. Got a question from Frank. Before we handle that, however, let me finish with this. So I'll get to your question, Frank, in a minute. When we're using pitch, it's great when we have an even pitch value, right? A quarter 20 tap gives me a pitch that's 0.05. It's already rounded for me. It's even. It's beautiful, right? Now, let's say we're using pitch, but we changed. Now, I realize I haven't changed my tap drill. We're going to ignore that for a minute. So I'm going to use a quarter 28 tap. So now we've got a situation where we're limited. The precision is better than this. The machine will take up to 6 decimal places. But we have to be able to change that formatting. We only want it to change when we're using pitch tapping. So now we've run into kind of a unique situation. So we've got our use pitch switch, and under PTAP we have this section. If use pitch equals 0, output this, else, in other words, if use pitch is not 0, output that. So this is where our pitch output is coming from. And we're outputting the value of pitch. Now, if we were to go through the post and check for the value, just pitch, not use underscore pitch, but just pitch by itself, let's say, for example, we find another place that's calling it out. So we can't change it everywhere. We need to change the formatting only in this section. But elsewhere, we need to use a different type of formatting. This is the perfect situation to use a post function that lets us change the formatting on the fly. So we're going to search for pitch. Actually, I've already got a bookmark for it. So I'm going to jump to my bookmark. Well, let's set a bookmark here. That'd be the smart thing to do. And I'm going to jump to my bookmark. So the normal pitch value that we're using, or the normal format statement, is format statement number 2 for pitch. Let's do something fun. Let's say that for whatever reason in this place, not only do we need 6 decimal digits, we also need the letter E. But in other situations, we need the letter F. Okay, so I'm going to go up. We've already got our format statement created. It's format statement number 18. And I'm also going to go look for the miscellaneous strings section. I'll show you why in a second. Oh, I think I've got it hidden. Yeah. So underneath our miscellaneous strings, I'm going to create two new ones. I'm going to create STRE and strf to hold, you guessed it, the letters E and the letters F. So I'm just creating some simple string definitions. I'm only following a convention here. I could certainly have done SE and SF just as easily, but you'll notice that for the single string letters we have this convention where we do str and then like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or in some cases srad for the radius value. So here I've got STRE and STRF. Jump back down to my bookmarks. And down in the post, here's what we're going to do. We know that in this case, we've entered an area inside PTAP. So the only time that we're going to get inside this else is if use pitch is not 0 and we're inside PTAP. So before my output, I need to run a formula to change the format assignment number and the prefix character. There is a generic variable in almost every post called result that is used as the return value from a function. Whenever we run a function in MP, there's always some type of signal back to let us know whether it was successful or not. So if I go up to the top of the post and I search for result, you can see that there's already this return value for the function. So it's just a generic numeric variable. So we'll go back down to PTAP. We're going to say result equals, and we're going to use the new FS see if I can get that out of the way. The new FS function. Can't click on it without the thing popping in the way of that, which is kind of annoying. But that's the one we want, which is new FS. This changes the format statement of a variable on the fly. And the way that it works, we have return equals new FS, and then we have the first parameter, comma, and the second parameter. So the first parameter is the format statement number. The second parameter is the variable we want to assign it to. We're going to do new FS18 pitch. That formula, that function, assigns format statement number 18 to the variable pitch. Then there's a function called new address, NWADRS. Which assigns a new character string as the prefix for a variable. There's also new suffix, NWSUFX, which is the same function but assigns a trailing value there. So with these two lines of code, I've changed the format statement number to 18 and the output string to E. Now, after I am done outputting those variables, I also want to make sure that I reset them so that if this pitch variable is used elsewhere in the post, I'm not screwing up the output for later on. So I'm assigning new FS2, which just says, hey, switch my format statement back to number 2 for the variable pitch. And new address, I'm reassigning string F to pitch. So here I changed them. Here's where I actually output it, and then here's where I change them back. So as long as we're in pitch mode, the output looks way different. Okay, if I switch it back, got a question here I'm trying to figure out here. So if the prefix is different between format statements with new FS, does it not automatically use the different prefix? I think you're confusing the format statement and the format assignment. Format statement is a numeric value only. Yeah, I think you got it now. So format statement here only applies to the numeric portion of the number. So when we change to 18, this only applies to the number. It doesn't apply to the prefix. And that's why we actually have those two different functions. So I have to have, now I don't necessarily have to have these characters predefined. So for example, I could have just done this. This would be perfectly valid as well. So yeah, that's why we actually have new FS is the number portion, new address is the string in front of the variable, and we can also do the end of the variable as well. So let's say just as a quick example, we wanted to do something funky, like let's see. Let's say, for example, we have some kind of old machine, and we have to actually apply some kind of correction factor to the value that we're using because the machine's slightly off for whatever reason. I'm going to assign the prefix string as open bracket pound 552 plus, and then we're also going to do this. New suffix close bracket pitch, and then down here I'll make that empty string for the suffix. So now what happens is when we're using pitch, all of this was output from one number. This was the number. Actually, sorry. This was the number. The open bracket pound 552 plus was the prefix string, and the close bracket was the suffix string. Actually, I think in order for this to really actually work, we'd still have to have the E address. So we'd have to have it look like this. We'd have to have it be E equals open bracket pound whatever plus the number plus the close bracket. That would work. So this would take our pitch and it would actually add whatever correction factor we wanted to. Maybe we don't want it to add a correction factor. Maybe we want it to multiply by a correction factor, right? So it acts like a scaling variable or something like that. In that case, we just go back in here, change that to the asterisk multiply sign. our pitch value is output like this. Now if we go change this guy back to 0, and we look at the results, you can see it looks quite different. Okay, so we can do all kinds of stuff like that on the fly. Apply different format statements, change the prefix and suffix, look up values from tables, all kinds of stuff. Next class, we will definitely cover more about format assignments before we start getting into string variables, string definitions. We are running late on class today, so let's go ahead and begin to wrap it up. Let's ask if there are any questions, and we'll take a few questions, and then we'll save the rest for office hours tomorrow. Tool change logic, that is true. We did have a question from Frank. What's the reason for the logic at each tool change? Now, were you thinking in relationship to the pitch, or which logic were you referring to about the tool change? You mean, why do we have different tool change sections? And Frank, let me know if you'd like to ask your question in person as well. I can always, if you've got a mic, I can unmute you and let you ask in person if it's, something that it's going to take a while to type. Oh yes. I got what you're asking. Okay, why are we getting that if statement out in the posted code? And Cade did answer it, actually. This is something we did in the first week of class. What we did is we added a bit of Boolean logic. So we have our tool change, T8M06. There's a variable on most Fanuc controls, pound 4120, that deals with the active tool in the spindle. Okay, it's actually the active tool variable that's been called, so sometimes pre-staging your tools might mess this up. But what it does is it allows you to skip past the tool change if the tool that you currently have loaded is already in the spindle. So it was something we added as part of our format assignment. We created this T block skip variable, and we assigned a prefix, which is the if pound 4120 EQ space. And then our suffix is close bracket space go to space. So T block skip, and we also have this end destination variable. So yeah, so what we did here is we added some logic to assign the sequence number to be 9,000 plus the tool number. And then we said T block skip equals the tool number. We output the if statement using this variable, and then the destination of where it's jumping to with end destination. And then we output the tool change, and then the tool comment. And this $N right here is the jump. Yeah. So good question. Yeah, that's one of the first things we did during our first office hours session. So if you want to see how I wrote that logic, you can check out the office hours. We should have that up on the site this week, at least the last couple weeks, probably the first 4 classes. And it'll only be this last Saturday's office hours, and then this class today that there'll be a couple day delay on. But think Derek's got this set up pretty well worked out with our developer for the web. So hopefully that will be, that whole process will happen more quickly now. Okay, good question though. Yeah, no worries, no worries. And it makes sense why you're looking at that going, hey, what the heck is that new stuff that's coming out? That's weird. I've never seen that before. So, yeah, and that's, that's exactly what we're doing with it, is we are making it so that that the operator can just hit play and not have to worry about setting block delete to skip past those blocks. So the logic here will just read and says, okay, is the current tool in my spindle equal to the tool that I'm about to change? And if it is, just jump past it. So it says, if this is true, go to 9008, and it jumps right down here to 9008. And you'll see the same thing again for the other tool changes as well. So here, if 4120, pound 4120 equal EQ4, go to 9004, and then down here, and 9004, and same thing here. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. Yeah, and then, this is definitely a good one. Anytime you can use macro logic, it should just make your life easier. That's always my goal. Great question, though. Okay, anything final before we wrap it up? Okay. Well, I think that's it for tonight. We'll go ahead and wrap up class, and I will see everybody tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. So, thanks everybody. Have yourselves a great night. Go ahead and shut down the recording.